Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for joining the webinar, Fiscal Fitness for Units, a Guide for Treasurers. My name is Patty Frazier, and I am serving right now as the New York State PTA Treasurer. My name might not be familiar to you because I just became the treasurer on an interim basis about a month ago. I have been part of PTA for many years, and I've served in most officer positions, though I have to admit this is one of the first times I'm actually serving as a treasurer. So I'm along for the ride with you. So I hope that this training, which I leaned on our past treasurer for help on, so I hope that it's going to be inclusive and help to answer any questions you might have. I'm pretty laid back about this. It is my first webinar too, so again, thanks for joining me on that. And we want to keep it to under 1 hour, but I'm more than happy if you want to jump in with questions. I think we are a small group. I think there's only about 6 to 8 of us on. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but we're just going to roll along. And so I'm going to start with my belief about a treasurer. So obviously, the treasurer plays a key role in the PTA unit. It is one of the key officer positions that we need to have. A PTA can't operate without a treasurer. The treasurer is in charge of the unit finances and really is the one who's keeping, all eyes on the funds, both coming in and going out. What I think is important for every treasurer to know is that you're not alone and you should never be operating alone as a treasurer. You should be asking for and should be getting the full support of your executive committee. The executive committee should always be a we and not an I. That is my belief in PTA and how I've always worked with my units. I am a former region director, and really that's what I believe. There's when you look at the job descriptions for all of the positions, the treasurer's obviously the longest and most detailed, and that really is a sign of what I'm trying to say as far as you volunteering your time to do this job, that you really should be doing it with the full support. I also equate the role of treasurer to be like the mom who always has to say no. No, you can't have that. No, we can't do that. And I don't, that can get discouraging. So please make sure that you have your executive committee on board with you so that they can share in the no's and in the celebrations of the yes as well. So in addition to being the treasurer, you're also part of the executive committee. So I know you're making other decisions, but always with the fiscal part in mind when you are making your decisions. And then finally, the treasurer makes sure that everything that is done to keep us in good standing as far as the required reports to the IRS and taking care of our membership so that we have our minimum of membership dues paid to the state. So does anybody have any questions about being in good standing? Okay, great. The duties of the treasurer, and all of these are pulled from the resource guide. I hope all of you have access to the resource guide, but if you haven't, it is available online at the New York State PTA website, and we will have a link to that in a little bit. So obviously we want our records to be accurate and detailed, and you can choose however you want to keep your financial records. You can use pencil and paper all the way up to the most sophisticated QuickBooks, Quicken, any other financial program that you want to use. You shouldn't purchase that on your own. If if it's something that you are using for PTA, then the PTA should support the purchase of whatever financial program you choose to use. Starting out the framework of the PTA, obviously you'll be preparing the budget, and again, not alone. We recommend that you have a budget and finance committee to help you with those things. It will be your job to take care of the funds and set the procedures for how funds are going to be given to you and how you are going to be dispersing them to people. We will be looking for you to report on your finances at every PTA meeting, and those should be written reports. There should be a monthly reconciliation happening, and just to clarify our monthly, and I will get into that a little bit later, it is the month of your bank statement. So if your bank statement is a September 10th to October 10th, that's what we mean by month. So you're reconciling your current financial picture to what's showing up on your bank account. We're in tax season right now. The IRS portal, for lack of a better word, opened up on July 1st and really should close on November 15th for us to submit our Form 990. Most of us are probably using the postcard, but there are guidelines and very detailed information in the resource guide if you have to go above the postcard, which means your gross income is over $50,000. Anybody on here who has not yet filed their tax return? Okay, good. I hope everybody has. You will prepare the books for the annual audit, and for most units, the audit report should have been produced already because the report is due at the first meeting of the school year, so the current school year. So I'm sure most of us have had a meeting in September. If not, our first one in October, the audit should have been completed and reported on. If not, it's not, I mean, you can catch up and get it done, but it's imperative that that audit be done. In this world that we live in, transparency is everything, and the audit is the best way for you to show your members and your potential members that you are good stewards of the funds and your books are transparent and open for anyone to be able to look at. And procedures are something that we ask every unit to have. They supplement your bylaws. So as the treasurer, you would be kind of responsible for overseeing the financial procedures and adjusting them or updating them as needed. That's something that can be done on a month-to-month basis. You could do it, every couple of months, just making sure that what you're doing as treasurer, because the world of treasurer has changed so much, again, back from the day with pencil and paper all the way till now. The treasurer procedures have changed, so you want to keep updating them based on what the current situation is at your unit. So some of the procedures that we should all have in place are that we should never be signing blank checks. And that when we have our signers on the check, there should be 2 for all checks, and those should be unrelated signers. We recommend that you have 3 to 4 approved signers on your bank account, and those signers should be approved by your membership of who's going to be given the role of a signer, but at all times two signatures on checks. We talked a little bit already about the bank statements being reconciled monthly. Again, that's the statement month. I got to correct that all the way through the PowerPoint here. And the report should always be reflected in your meeting minutes. So it's very important that the minutes, which are permanent documents of the organization, contain the information. It could just be attached to the minutes, your treasury report. When PTA funds are involved, they should never be deposited anywhere but the PTA bank account, never in a personal account, never in a school account, and never even, if possible, left in a school safe or locked up in the school for any length of time. So preferably when you're out looking for a bank to service the PTA, it would be great to find one that either has extensive hours on weekends and that, or it has a drop box that you can deposit funds at night after a big event. Again, PTA funds should always be separate from the school funds and any other group that you might be partnering with for an event or an activity. Complete and accurate record keeping also is important. And again, if you are questioned about your records, it doesn't mean you have to produce them right away, but you should be able to, within a reasonable amount of time, answer any questions about the funds of your organization. And then finally, again, we can't stress enough the need for the annual audit. The annual audit details, you can find those in your bylaws, your audit committee makeup. So I encourage everybody to make sure that they are following that. And we will get to that, a new reason why you have to have an annual audit, in a few slides ahead. So the treasurer is the keeper of the books, and I could have put that in quote, the books, because it's not necessarily always a physical book anymore. A lot of the times we're keeping them on our computers. You can be using the cloud, you could be using thumb drives, whatever you're doing, but that's, you just should be working with your organization of where they want the books to be. So again, we should have our audit reports, our current ledger, which is just the activity that's going through all of our funds in the bank statements, our reconciliations, which are happening in the statement month, control of the checkbook, vouchers when people are asking for money, and bills that you're paying, and then any records that should go along with them, check numbers and that sort of thing. You should have a copy of the bylaws and the current unit procedures for everybody, not just your financial procedures. The current approved budget, and as we all know, the budget is a living document and it doesn't always stay the same from the day it was approved. So you should always have the most up-to-date version. Meeting minutes, because the meeting minutes will prove why your budget might have changed a budget line, because the minutes will record amendments to the budget. The letter of determination is your 501c3 status, and you received that when you became a PTA upon chartering. I can imagine many of our units that have been PTAs since 1960, 1950, they might not have their original letter of determination. If you don't, you can easily get that. The procedure has changed a little bit. We've moved that function into the office, at the PTA office, so you can just send an email either to myself or the office requesting a copy of your letter of determination. You only need to do that once. It will be dated, but as long as you have one copy of it, that's all you need. You don't have to keep updating it every year. You should have an insurance certificate that is dated for this year, and your New York State tax exempt form, your filing of last year's, your 990 filing. It says previous year, so currently our filing is for 2018. So you want to make sure that you've got that filed. Again, the deadline is November 15th. And then you should always have this year's information as to what bills you've been paying, who's been requesting money, and then you should have last year's. You always want to make that comparison to how things are going in your PTA. And here's a little more about the letter of determination. So you can see in the corner with the two documents, it's actually a two-piece document now, the letter of determination, if you don't have your original one. So it is a letter from PTA that states you're part of our blanket group. So New York State PTA has one umbrella FEIN number, it's also called, but you also have your own designated one for your unit, and that's detailed on the second letter. So those two pieces together, when you might have some fundraising organizations are asking for your letter of determination, you need this when you're going to the bank to open up your accounts. So if you don't have them, please feel free to reach out. We can generate them pretty quickly for you. You can also do it through your region director as well. But again, the office is willing to take the email on that and move that letter to you quickly via email. So your treasurer's report should be presented at every meeting. And if you can't be there, they should be submitted to the president for her to appoint somebody else, or herself to present them, or himself to present them to the membership. And again, this is what I've been saying about follow your bank statement month, not your calendar month, when you're going from meeting to meeting. All of the records should be available. Again, the transparency is very important. So you need to bring what you can in case there are questions. And always the report becomes part of your unit's minutes for that meeting. So that was kind of a little bit of a duplicate, but just a reminder for all of that, the permanence of the records is important. And in the resource guide, we are section 5A for finance. There is also the list of records of retention. So it tells you how long you have to retain certain records. Some are permanent, some are 7 years, some are 3 years. And so that's a great checklist to use, especially when you get to school and you might have a filing cabinet that seems to be bursting at the seams. You can use that as a way to thin out what you've been saving. There is also a sample treasurer's report in the resource guide. Has everybody accessed the resource guide? Oh, good. Somebody jump in. Oh, good. Thankfully. Has anyone accessed the resource guide?
Yeah, Nicole says yes, and Brian says yes.
Okay, good. Okay, good. All right, thank you. It was so quiet for a little while there. I was feeling like maybe I cut myself off. Okay, next. So here is that sample of the treasurer's report. As you can see, it has the actual monthly, so that's kind of like a combined report. So it's got your monthly, what's been happening since the last, the bank statement, that monthly report. Then it has your whole year to date and your budget. So it's kind of a combined combined report, which is great. It's less paper, obviously, and it gives a full snapshot picture in one report. So I highly recommend this type of report. And what I want to point out is you see at the bottom total expense and balance on hand in blue. That's like your bottom line. And so I want you to know that, or just to point out that everybody should have a below the line accounting. And as you can see on there, the below the line accounting that we're talking about is your national and state portion of your dues money. So again, you are only entitled to keep the local portion, and that should appear on your income. But as far as the $4, which is the combination of the $1.75 and $2.25 that go for national and state, that it should never pass through your budget, because those you don't own those funds. So but you need to account for them. Again, the transparency. So you do some below the line accounting there. Is that good for everybody? Is everybody using that type of method?
Yes.
Okay, it makes sense? Okay, great. Okay, so the reconciliation is simply a review of the past statement month's receipt, cash on hand, and disbursement. You will have this in your ledger. So in other words, your ledger is your activity, and so you could kind of line your ledger from this is the start of our statement month and this is the end. So the people that are doing the reconciliation, and we recommend two, can see everything that they need to see to make sure that first, the books are balancing, and second of all, that the money that's coming in and going out is going out and coming in from the appropriate sources. If the reconciliation comes up with any issues, it really is something that should be reported to the membership at the meeting, and what actions can be taken to correct that. We are asking that it be done at every meeting, so that each month, it's even if you don't have a monthly meeting, that's a general meeting, but you maybe have a board meeting, you can do them at those meetings, or your executive committee meeting. But we really want to get them so that you're doing them every month and they're not piling up, because again, if there's a problem, you want to catch it as quickly as you can. And sometimes the problem might be something as simple as transposed numbers that are going to throw off the audit at the end. So it's not necessarily that something is happening that's wrong illegally. It just means that there might be something that got missed or didn't balance right. So we ask you to pick volunteers to do the reconciliation. It can be the same people every month, or it could be different people. It's your choice on what you want to do, but it cannot be somebody who's a signatory on the account, and not somebody who's related to any of the key officers, the treasurer, the president, or the secretary. Again, statement month is what you want to be using. And this is very important that it be recorded in the minutes when it's reported that who did the reconciliation. The reconciliation should also be signed off on. So the bank account people should sign the bank account statement in full name, not just initials. And then again, the records are retained both by the treasurer and the secretary. Now, this next slide is a copy of the reconciliation form, which a lot of banks have it like on the back of your statement. This reconciliation form should be in the resource guide, and it is not currently appearing there. So my apologies for that, but I will make sure that it gets, if there's a reason why it isn't in the resource guide, I will figure that out, but we will try to get it in there for you to use and be able to copy if you want to just make 12 copies to use for each one of your months. I'm terrible at this stuff. On my screen left is just in the thicker blue box is just like an enlargement of the section. So the first section again talks about the balance from last month, what you took in, what cash you might have that didn't get into the bank, what you've sent out, and then what you have left on hand. And then of course it has all the little hints there of what should balance. And then the next statement, again, allows you to fill in the reasons why things might not balance, because a check didn't clear yet. And so you took it off your ledger, but it didn't come out of the bank. So you can write that there, just so you can say that will match your ledger amount, will then match the bank account balance. And then finally, the bottom section is, And this doesn't have to happen on every reconciliation. This is a pretty all-inclusive one where you, and this is usually what you do at the end of the audit, is you make your, the audit committee or the reconcilers say, yes, everything was great, it was correct, or we couldn't finish it because we didn't have all the information we need. They really need to kind of come up with, this is great, not great type thing. So this is a way to do it that's very official, but it's not necessary. Again, when your reconcilers sign off on the bank statement and sign off with that section of the ledger, they can just write correct or incomplete, or one of the other two choices, incorrect or, you know, or whatever they feel any adjustments need to be made. So, but this is a great tool to use as far as having a form that's already in place and it's familiar. And if you have the same people doing it every month, they're familiar with using it. So here's the thing about the reconciliations. Even though this was accepted practice for many years in PTA, it was procedural and not bylaws, or it wasn't any other requirement. It was highly recommended, and we wanted everyone to include it in their procedures. We know that a lot of units weren't doing that. Since we've been using AIM Insurance as our provider, they have made it very clear to us that one of the stipulations of our insurance policy is that we do have to have these monthly reconciliations in order for them to honor a claim that might involve anything to do with your finances. So if you think that there's a loss of funds or some kind of theft from your PTA, the first thing they're going to ask you is copies of your monthly reconciliations. If you don't have that, there's a really strong chance, and believe me, I experienced it with the unit that I was working with, that they are not going to honor the claim. So there's, you know, it doesn't take long to do the reconciliation. We highly recommend it anyway, but just having this extra stipulation of the insurance company requiring it is just makes it more of a priority for your unit. I will say this, that the insurance company, you know, we have a pretty low premium from them, and one of the reasons why it is because we have all grouped together to say we are going to do our best to make sure that we follow the play, pause, and stop list when we're doing activities, and we're doing things like these financial procedures in place. So that allows the insurance company to say, I think you're doing good things, so we can give you a better deal on your premium. In working, I don't know if any of you have been in with the insurance company AIM at one of their workshops that they've done at the state level, they will tell you that for many years, their first years in business, and I think they've been in business since the 60s or 70s, but don't quote me on that, liability and injuries were their number one claim, and they have said in the last 10 years, loss of funds through theft is their number one claim that they have been receiving. So again, it's common to say it, but I will repeat it. If you don't think it can happen to you, trust me, it can, and trust me, it will be the person that you least expected. And I, as region director, I had actually, in my 3 years as region director, had 2 times that we went through that situation. The PTA audit has always been a part of your bylaws, the fact that we have to have a report, and then the makeup of the committee, and so that that is something that all units should have been doing. Again, we find that this is something that units maybe don't always pay attention to, and so we really want to get the word out to make sure that people are conducting this review. It is done. We have all the instructions, so you can do it and ask some volunteers to do it. Anybody that, you know, likes to do this kind of work, if you might have somebody who works in bookkeeping or accounting in your unit that would volunteer to do it, great. There's no reason that you can't hire somebody to do it if your membership approves that expenditure, and we do have some units that have either higher gross receipts or some kinds of complicated, or they feel that they're not comfortable doing the audit. They can do it, but it really is a procedure that can easily be handled by volunteers. The instructions are very clear in the resource guide. If you have, if you aren't able to find volunteers to do it, and you don't have the finances or the ability to hire somebody professional to do it, you can reach out to your region for assistance. The region directors and the region board should be able to help you either find some volunteers or become volunteers themselves to come in and help you out. Again, transparency is everything. I mean, I've worked with units that have been in just terrible financial shape. And once we get them back in order, we have always found that they have gotten more volunteers and their membership has increased because people feel more comfortable in working and being a part of an organization that knows where their money is, simply put. And again, it's something that can be done over the summer. The audit, the treasurer, as a treasurer, you can prepare as much as you want for the audit and be on site for it. You don't participate in it, but you can be there to answer questions, either in person, off to the side, or at home, by text or whatever. But it really is important. And as they said, even though it should have been done, if you haven't done it already, it's never too late. Some of this I already covered, but the audit committee, they'll ask for 3 people that are appointed to be on the audit committee. Non-check signers, of course, because these are people that we want to be totally neutral. Again, not related to check signers. And then at the end, a written report has to be produced and shared with the membership. And so we will go to the next page. There's 2 different types of financial reports that are shown in the resource guide. You can do the audit report or the financial review. They both pretty much do the same exact things. It's just a matter of which one works better for you. Back to the insurance company. This is another stipulation now. So this reinforces the reason for the audit. Again, this is the second piece that they will ask you for if you go to file a claim for anything to do with missing funds. So before I go further with the insurance company, Amy, are there any questions about audits or?
Let me scroll down here.
I have a question about the audit committee. Do they have to must fill out the report form, or just they like writing a letter is okay?
Can you? I didn't hear the first part of your question. Can you start again, please?
I'm sorry. My question is, does the community need to fill out the form in detail, showing the account balance and the book balance, the match, or?
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Because I in my region they only like cite the names and said it's correct the record, so didn't show the detail like you are showing on here. So should I ask them to fill the form out?
Right. Yes, you need that form. Yes, and you can use the resource guide, which is on the website. You can use the resource guide or your bylaws to say this is what we need to do, and this is where it shows us what to do. And yes, you need that report because, you as a treasurer want to be given a fresh start. You don't want to take on somebody else's problem, so to speak. So if there's a mistake that was made in the books, and it could have been an innocent mistake, it's not fair to a new treasurer or the new starting year to not have the correct figure to start with. So it's very important that the books be audited and balanced so that you have the best information of what your starting figure of carryover money would be starting July 1st. And that needs to be in writing.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah, and and it's a step-by-step thing on the report. So yes, and really the audit in the end is almost like balancing your checkbook. So I think a lot of people often just use an Excel spreadsheet to conduct the audit. So there's different ways of doing it, but yes, it has to be in writing and it has to be signed off as, like you said, either we think this was a good audit, the books are well kept, or we need to think about a different way, and this is what we recommend.
Yes, I'm new to this position, so what I see is that my region, they only show set which day they audit, and then the book is in balance, but they didn't show the detail and also fill out a form like now you have. So I'm questioning, even though they said they audit it, but didn't show any like the balance and proof for how they are balanced.
Right. Are you the treasurer for the region?
Yes, I am new to the position. That's why I
You want to check with the region director and let her know that you need to the committee needs to come back and help you do that form. I mean, they really should be doing it. You should just be, there to answer questions. But they need to come back. It's first off, as a region, you should be doing it the way that we expect the units to do it. So again, we're here to help if you need any support on that, or if the region director wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to, explain what it is that they need. But yes, there should be a written report, and it's part of the permanent record of the organization.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to let them know this is the form should be filled out. Thank you.
Yeah, great.
All right.
So as another part of our good standing, we are required to participate in the New York State PTA insurance program, which is through the AIM company that we talked about. Your insurance payment is due. I think they start sending it out in April, with June 15th as like the last date that we really want to get your premiums in with your signed paperwork. About a month later, the certificate of insurance will be actually was emailed this year to everybody, and then mailed. So you should have that, and that you make as many copies of that as you want to prove to your building where you might be meeting that you have insurance. The treasurer should keep one in their records, the president and the secretary. So everyone should have a copy of that. And as we've talked about, your coverage includes the directors and officers and any actions they might be taking on behalf of the organization, crime, any loss of funds, and liability if anything should happen at one of your events or activities. You can also buy additional optional coverages, and they are all detailed in the resource guide, which is section 5B for insurance. One of the ones that has been popular, some people are using it, some people aren't, is the social media coverage. So if that's something that your unit is heavily using, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you might want to look into that to see if that's something that would be viable for your unit. The most important part of the insurance is the stop, pause, and play list of activities, because again, that's part of our agreement with the insurance company that we are going to focus and use this list. When we decide our programs and our activities for the year, we're going to check this list to make sure that we are on the green. We're doing things that are listed as play. Definitely not doing anything from the stop list. On the pause list, there's just some guidance there for some activities, but we tend to stay away from some of those as well. You know your community best, so that's what's important about assessing your activities from the playlist. But I will say this, if there's ever a question, if you're just not sure, if you want reassurance, the AIM company is available 24/7, either by email or at the 800 number to ask. And you just have to let them know you're from New York State PTA. You can let them know your unit code or your unit name. But the most important thing is they know you're part of New York State PTA, so they can reference our paperwork there, and they will answer questions very quickly and let you know what their stand is if you, again, have an activity that you're not sure about or
Patty?
falls into a gray area. Yeah,
Nicole
ready.
has a question. I think we do, but do we have a list? Do we have a list of the stop, pause, play activities? I think it's in that.
It is in the resource guide.
I think it's in the resource guide in that second section about
Section
insurance.
5B.
5B. Yep.
Section 5B.
Thank you.
And of course, your region director also is totally up to speed on the stop, pause, and play list and can certainly give you guidance as well. That is what they're there for. So one of the biggest things about PTA over, since my career in PTA has always been playgrounds. What about playgrounds? It's our mission is what we need to focus on when we're doing any PTA activities. It is part of our 501c3 status. To maintain that status, we have to make sure that we're working for the mission of PTA. The mission of PTA is to make every child's potential a reality. Our purposes are to do that by connecting home and school. So yes, that seems like something that a playground could possibly be. But we are not recommending that a PTA takes on the process of constructing playgrounds. Our advice to you as PTAs is we are an advocacy organization and we train people to be advocates. We encourage people to be advocates. If you feel your school needs a playground, gather your community, gather your PTA, and go to your school district, go to your school board meetings, and let them know that this is what you want, and how can that get put into the budget? How can funds be found for that particular thing? It's not as fun and team building maybe as working together and having fundraisers upon fundraisers upon fundraisers to build a playground. But in the long run, it will be satisfying to be able to say that you worked with your school district and you used your voices to put that playground in, rather than using a lot of sweat equity for that. If a playground is something, and a playground committee is something that your community and a lot of your PTA parents feel strongly about, we do recommend that they form a separate organization whose sole purpose is to do things like buy playground equipment or raise funds to pay for a playground. They would have to establish their own bank account. They can apply for their own 501c3 status to do it, insurance, or whatever else the school district would want them to do. No playground should be started to fundraise without the okay from the principal and the school district first, to make sure that you're on the right track. We have had, I'm not going to lie, we have had PTAs that have gone about providing equipment, or providing playground play equipment, not like like backhoes or anything, but the actual like slides and swings. If that is something that you're going to do, which again, it's not recommended, we don't really feel for fiscal and liability risks that this is the best use of your PTA energy. The best way to go about doing any of that is to gift the money to the school district for the purpose. But I do caution you to seriously consider if your PTA brings this idea forward of getting into these projects that take significant amount of funds. It really does take a lot of planning, and we have units that have been trying to do these larger projects that have been raising money for years, and they've started, and some of the kids are already in high school, and they still haven't raised enough money to complete the project. It's really not fair to the people that are contributing to it, that they're not going to be able to take advantage of it. So I think that's one of the other filters that you want to put this type of project through if you're going to choose to do it. Any questions about that? We have a similar policy with field trips and transportation. We really don't feel that PTAs should be paying for things that the school district should be paying for that are part of the educational program. But we do know that field trips can enrich a student's education, and we do believe in those. What we can't do is actually directly fund the field trip. So we would, again, fall back to the granting the money to the district with the restriction that we are granting this for the school district to use to fund field trips, and letting the district pay the vendor directly, wherever the field trip might be. And under no circumstances ever can we pay for the transportation, the school buses. We cannot fund those, even through the grant. That is part of our stop on our stop, play, and pause list. We also recommend that parents do not use their own transportation to go to field trips. Again, that is something that our insurance does not cover. So if anything should happen, the liability could fall back on the PTA unit directly, and unfortunately the insurance can't back you up there. And you might want to look into school district policies too about parents transporting themselves on field trips, to field trips destinations. When we are doing things for the school, sometimes there are things that, again, we want to enrich the students' experience at school that do involve purchasing things. Again, that should be through a grant program with the gifts to the school district, so the school district can make the purchase and then take ownership. I did a no-no back in the day when I was a PTA president, and didn't really realize what was happening, and our principal asked us to buy a laminating machine, and we went ahead and did it, and then came back to us year after year after year for us to buy supplies and to handle the repairs every time it broke down. So the no-nos about all of that is we committed future PTAs to something they might not want to do by having to buy supplies and repairs. We committed our PTA to some liability because something could happen for a teacher using the laminating machine. So I appreciate all of you being on the webinar tonight. I wish I would have had something like this back when I was a PTA president, because I think I would have left my PTA in a little bit better shape than it could have been in. So it's very important that never make these decisions just you, or even just you and the president. You know, there should be an executive committee decision about things. And yes, my executive committee did all agree for the laminating machine, but I think we all know better now. And you want to make sure that your membership knows what you're doing, because this is, again, we are a membership-based organization. It's very important that they approve our decisions. The school district can choose to accept the grant or may not. It goes through the school board, and again, it's up to them, but they can make the final decision. But at least there is no future responsibility for the PTA. You do want to, if you do grant the money, there should be an accounting of how the funds have been spent. And you can usually get that through your business manager in the school district. And we should not be providing financial assistance to the school. So again, if the principal comes and says, you know, I'd like to have $10,000 in a slush fund to, you know, purchase supplies throughout the year, that is not the type of thing that PTAs can be doing. It actually violates our 501c3 IRS policies as well. So even doing the grants, in the process of giving it to the school district, we want to be clear to all of our PTAs that it doesn't totally absolve you of all of your liability, but it can lessen exposure. You know, in a litigious world that we live in, anybody can be sued for anything, but it's good to know that you have your insurance, for the most part, to protect you on some of these, what could be considered frivolous lawsuits. So the budget. The budget is one of your most important pieces of paper for a PTA. It's what guides you through the year. A committee should be put together to form the budget, to structure it. The best way to create a budget is to look at what you did last year and tweak and change as needed for the upcoming year. It's important to know that the way a PTA should be budgeting is the committee should be receiving the information from the board of what they want to do in the upcoming year, and then decide. Then it's the budget committee's work to help decide how we're going to get the money to fund those things. It's not the opposite way where we say, oh, we're going to do 5 fundraisers, we're going to get all this money, and how are we going to spend it? It very much is, we want to do this, and how can we get the money to do it? We are not a fundraising organization. We are advocacy, so we do want to limit our fundraising to suit our needs. And we really want to just, as you know, we register new members every year. Every year is like a fresh year. And so the same thing with our activities and how we pay for them. We want to make sure that we're creating our calendar for this year of events and activities, and then receiving the funds to support those, but not gaining a lot of other funds through extra fundraising that we're carrying over from year to year to year without the people that helped raise that money benefiting from it. So the preliminary budget should be drafted by the committee, and then it's submitted to either the executive committee or the board for review. They can suggest and make changes, and then the final product does go in front of your membership. So presenting the draft budget for them, giving them enough time, because you have to make sure that they have enough time to do it for when you want to present your budget to your membership. So the final budget should be presented at a general PTA membership meeting. Now, that meeting can be either one of the last meetings of your year or in September. We are recommending trying to get that done at one of your last meetings of the year so that you have a spending plan in place to begin July 1st. Our fiscal year ends June 30th. So if you have your approved budget, which will start July 1st, already approved, then any activities that need funding over the summer can take place. If not, in your final 2 months of the year, you need to have your membership approve a spending plan that will be in effect until the budget is approved at your first meeting of the new school year. A majority vote of your members present are needed to adopt the budget. And of course, you need to make sure you have your quorum present before you can even conduct business. So your quorum is outlined in your bylaws, the amount of members you need present throughout the entire meeting. It can't be somebody who signs in and then leaves. They have to stay for the entire meeting to conduct business. So once the budget is approved or adopted, then the PTA has the power to spend the funds or to start raising the money if a fundraiser is called for to support the budget. It's very important that funds not be spent unless they're approved. This next slide just talks a little bit about the dues and that bottom line accounting that we talked about earlier. So I'm just going to glide through that. But if anybody has any questions, put that in the chat box. We can come back to that. As we said earlier, the budget is a living document, so it can be amended as needed. So in other words, if you have a great fundraiser that raised more funds than you needed and you can eliminate one, or a new initiative comes forward that you need funds for, but you didn't have a line item for, so you need to add that to your budget, all of those amendments can be made at any time. Again, they need to be approved by your general membership at a meeting where there's a quorum. The important thing to note about amendments is if you are able to get notice out ahead of time that that vote is going to happen, then you just need a simple majority to pass the amendment. If the amendment happens at a meeting, or it just comes up at a meeting and you choose to have a motion that presents that an amendment, or you weren't able to give the notice for it, you do need a 2/3 vote of the members present to approve an amendment. Again, once we establish that a quorum is present, then however many members you have present, you need 2/3 of them to vote to approve an amendment. Okay, before we get into the 990, any questions, Amy, on the budget? Or does anyone want to chime in?
Nicole, I think wants you to go through, but let me see, scroll up here. Nicole, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead. I'm just trying to.
Oh, okay. Can you just go through that, what you just said one more time? Because I got a little
about
confused.
Amending the budget? About amending the budget? Okay.
Yeah, like so, yeah, right there. So just
okay.
That second bullet point.
Sure, the second bullet point. Okay, so you have your budget is approved. And when you approve your budget, either at the end of the school year or in the first meeting of the year, you know, when you approve your budget, you're supposed to go through line by line. So everybody understands everything about the budget. Now, if you do it in September, sometimes that's kind of hard at your first meeting because people come and they're like, oh my gosh, they're so enthused. And then they have to sit there and go line by line through your budget. It's a little bit dry. So that's why we recommend do it at the end of the year with people that are familiar so they can kind of set the plans in place for the upcoming year. But that being said, sometimes the budget needs to be changed. You need to make changes to it. Again, it's October and you've just got this great opportunity to bring in a speaker that is going to talk to your parents, and we need $50 in materials to support the speaker. Let's just leave it at that. There's not a line item for that on the budget. There's no place to put that expense, and you want to create a line item for the speaker expenses, then you need an amendment of the budget to create that line. So where are we going to get the $50 from? We're going to move it from one line to another, or we had extra money from the September fundraiser and we're going to put it there to expend. If you don't announce it ahead of time to your members, like, hey, we're having a PTA meeting on October 15th, please come because, and this is what we're going to do at the meeting. We're going to learn about the speaker that's coming in and we're going to have some budget amendments that we need you to vote on. That's called prior notice. If you give that, then you just, when you ask for the amendment, you just need a majority of your members present to vote yes for the amendment. But if it just happens at the meeting where all of a sudden everybody gets excited about the speaker and these expenses are needed to be accounted for in the budget, you need 2/3 of your members that are there to agree to add that line to the budget or make any amendment to the budget.
Okay, so with notice, it's majority, and without notice, it's 2/3.
2/3, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. It's one of the most violated things that we do as a PTA is not do the 2/3. Okay, So we're just going to breeze quickly through the 990. Again, the resource guide has excellent instructions on how to file it, as does the national website. So I recommend either one of those to go through. Again, we're filing for 2018. Most of our units have gross receipts, which is all of your receipts before you take out any money, are usually still less than 50,000. So you can do the postcard, which takes less than 15 minutes. The File 990 system that New York State PTA has signed on for all of us to use. They've been in contact every month letting us know if you haven't filed, it's time to file now. So I think that's just a general overview of that. These are just the things on this next slide of what you need, but a lot of you have already filed, and filling in your organization name. Most of us don't have a website to add, so that's okay. And again, you're just really confirming that your gross receipts are less than 50,000. So if you don't file by the 15th, I just recommend just go on and try to do it. Sometimes it works for people that they don't, and there's no repercussions. There's no penalties. There's no loss of exemption. If you can, sometimes the system stays open for a little while, but don't wait until the 15th. If you need help, let us know. We can help you with it. If you do not file for 2 years in a row, you will get a notice from the IRS. And if you don't file for 3 consecutive years, as you see across the bottom, you will have your 501c3 status revoked. It's a bit of a process to get it back, and sometimes it involves money. It could be up to $800, $1,000. So you don't want to mess up your unit and have them forced to pay these penalties. So let's, I think that we have a lot of support for filing the 990, but please share the word with the fellow units in your area. Just let's get them filed. If you do lose your 501c3 status, your region director is the first person who will probably reach out to you first, because they'll probably hear about it because you're under our New York State status, so New York State will inform them. You can still continue to be a PTA while you go through the process of getting your status back. The only things that you can't do are receive grants, because you're no longer in good standing. You aren't able to vote at the you can attend trainings and state events, but you can't be a delegate and vote at those events.
Patty, Mai has a
yes.
question about File 990.
Sure. I'm ready.
She just has a question.
Okay.
Hey, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away.
Oh, I'm terrible at timing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Thank you. My question is, while file the 990, do we need to register?
Yes, and you know what? If you should check with your treasurer, that was a treasurer before you. They might already have the login, and they might have passed it on to you, but you might have to set up a new one. But it's very simple. It's just like logging onto any website. So you use the link from the File 990.
Yeah, just for in case if we don't have anything from the past. So
okay.
do I need to redo it?
Yes.
I tried to. I went to the resource guide and I tried to look over all the informations, but I tapped on that site.
Which region are you from? Which region are you from?
I'm from Hicksville.
Okay, so you're from Nassau.
Nassau, yes.
Okay, so I think you still might be under the 50,000, but can we talk at the end about your particular?
Oh, yes, sure. Yes, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stay on with you.
All right.
Okay. So again, the IRS regulations are things that we need to follow for our 501c3, which again, staying for the mission of PTA. And so I just want to remind everybody that we can't do anything that benefits one student or family. And I know this can be heart-wrenching at times. There are terrible tragedies that happen, but we really need to make sure, and this is where it's really hard for a treasurer to have to be the person to say no. But when a situation arises where a PTA wants to do something that helps just one particular family or one particular child, your best advice is we are great at fundraising, we're great at organizing things, we're great at advocating. Use those skills, but take that outside of PTA to try to help that family. It really is just not within our guidelines through the IRS to do any events or activities, or just even writing out a donation that benefits only one student or family. That's the same sort of thing for a Sunshine Fund. Again, this is something we all had on our budgets, and we've tried to remove them from as many units as we can. But we all had a Sunshine Fund where, if there was, we needed to send flowers to somebody, or, we welcomed, a teacher had a baby and we wanted to send a gift. We had those, and we've removed them because that's the same sort of thing where we're donating to just one family. What we can do is, as a PTA, you can certainly have an envelope at a meeting and say, Mrs. So-and-so just had a baby. If anyone wants to contribute to a gift, you can, put your contribution here in this envelope, and we will report how much is in at the end of the meeting, and so-and-so has been assigned to go purchase it, and it will just be coming from families of our school, not from the PTA. Okay. Sometimes we can work with other groups. People will come to us, different organizations wanting to partner with us. On the slide, we use the sample of the American Cancer Society. Sometimes it's an education booster group. They want to take advantage of the numbers we have. We want to work with them because they have reached out to the community in different ways. The important thing is that they are also a 501c3 organization that has a mission similar to ours. So in other words, the American Cancer Society, maybe not so much, because their mission is for all people that might be suffering from cancer, where ours is a child advocacy focused one. So we want to make sure that we're partnering with other people that are looking out for the interests of children. So again, it's all about writing things down and being transparent. Who's going to do what? Who's responsible for what, and where is the money going to go? And as always, the money gets settled before it goes through our bank account. So in other words, we cannot do a fund run with the football boosters and then raise $20,000 and have all $20,000 go into the PTA account if we agreed up front that they were going to get 50% and we're going to get 50%. We have to know that their 50%, their $10,000 is going to go into their bank account, and they're going to be responsible about it. So it's all about making sure that we have all the details in place ahead of time so nobody can ask questions later. We talked a lot about these resources, the resource guide on the New York State website, our New York State website treasurer page, the e-learning that you can take at National PTA, and hopefully you all have signed up for the PTA kit. It used to be called the Back to School kit, and now sometimes it's called the Local Leader kit. There's a whole section there on finance, a lot of forms that you can use to adapt to your unit. It's really a great source for every PTA, any position. Your region director and region treasurer are great resources as well. New York Parent Teacher is our quarterly newsletter. And then finally, I'm here to help. And if I'm not the treasurer, whoever the next treasurer is has the same email. So feel free to reach out anytime. We can certainly get you in the right direction if we can't help you immediately. So that pretty much wraps up everything. So I can do some questions. I did want to point out a couple of things. One, the other document that Amy sent for you, sent with the PowerPoint, is called the 30-point checkup. That is actually something that we recommend every unit use as an executive committee tool to kind of go through, but a lot of it relates to the treasurer position. So that's why I thought, if the treasurer wanted to kind of lead her executive committee through those steps of the 30-point checkup, it gets everybody understanding how they can work together to make sure that your PTA unit stays on mission. And that actually is a document that been created by one of our regions that we've been using at state, but I'm very familiar with it because I was one of the authors of the original one. So if you have any questions about that, I can help. And then finally, I meant to touch on it when we were doing the budget. It's really important that on your budget that you show you have a connection to your region, your state, and national PTA. So because they are part of our mission, and they are part, everybody who joins PTA joins all those other units as well. So it's really important that you have expense line items that show that you are going to training at your region level or going to the events at the region level, going to events and training at state and even at national, if that's something that you want to look into. But having those on your budget doesn't mean you actually are going to be spending that money if you can't find somebody who's willing to or able to go to those events. But I do think it's important that you show those things on your budget. So those were my last little notes that I had. So I know Nicole has the question from Nassau, but are there any other questions that I can answer before we all sign off, but I stay on with Nicole?
Yep. Nicole's from Taconic.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Nicole. Sorry. You don't have to stay on with me then.
You can sign off. It's fine.
Okay.
So
I want to thank everybody for attending. And Amy, just what do I do now? I just say we're done?
Yeah, we're done, and I'm going to stop recording, and y'all can keep talking.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, we're all off the record now. All right.